The debate had been advertised as a clash of ideologies. An academic professor, staunch in his progressive beliefs, versus Senator Kennedy, a seasoned politician known for his no-nonsense, traditional approach to American values and principles. As the event unfolded before a packed auditorium, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. On one side of the podium stood Professor William Gray, a man whose reputation for championing social justice, critical race theory, and progressive reforms had made him both revered and reviled in academic circles. His credentials were impeccable: a tenured professor at a prestigious university, best-selling author of several books on intersectionality, and a sought-after speaker on the topics of race, privilege, and systemic oppression. His appearance was as polished as his arguments, a well-groomed academic whose every word seemed meticulously chosen to reflect a sense of enlightened moral superiority. On the other side, Senator John Kennedy, a Louisiana politician who had risen to national prominence with his sharp wit, biting criticisms, and unapologetically conservative stance, stood ready to challenge the professor's claims. Known for his folksy charm and his willingness to speak in plain terms, Kennedy was not one to shy away from confrontation, especially when he believed that the country's traditional values were under attack. From the moment the debate began, Gray's rhetoric was typical of the type of progressive discourse that had gained traction in the halls of academia, arguing that America was built on a system of oppression, and that any effort to address its inequalities had to start with the dismantling of traditional power structures. He was passionate, his voice growing in intensity as he described the privilege inherent in American society, calling for more inclusive policies that favored marginalized groups, and questioning the very foundations of American democracy. The crowd seemed to hang on his every word, many nodding in agreement, while others remained silent, perhaps unsure of how to respond to the overwhelming barrage of liberal ideals. Then came Kennedy's turn. With his trademark drawl and a wry smile that hinted at the impending storm, he addressed the professor's claims with a calm and measured tone, making it clear that he did not share Gray's worldview. "Well," Professor Kennedy began, leaning into the microphone with a smile that masked the intensity of his words, "I've listened to your arguments, and I've heard you speak about privilege and oppression, but I've got to tell you, your view of America seems a little distorted." The room quieted, sensing that this was not going to be an ordinary back and forth. "You see, the way I grew up, we didn't need lectures on privilege. We needed jobs, we needed opportunities, and we needed the kind of education that empowers people to lift themselves up, not just be told they're victims because of the color of their skin, or their gender, or their identity." Kennedy's words resonated with a powerful clarity, cutting through Gray's academic jargon like a knife. He continued, citing personal anecdotes from his own humble beginnings in rural Louisiana, where he had watched his parents work hard to provide for their family, never once blaming their circumstances on anything other than the need for hard work and perseverance. "America," he asserted, "is not a place where we should encourage division. It's a place where we should be encouraging people to stand up, work hard, and achieve. You don't get to where I've gotten by blaming your problems on somebody else." The professor's face tightened as Kennedy spoke, the veneer of academic superiority starting to crack. His earlier confidence began to falter as the senator's words seemed to have a direct, piercing effect on his carefully crafted narrative. Kennedy's challenge wasn't just an ideological difference. It was a direct questioning of the very foundation upon which Gray had built his career. Gray attempted to respond, his voice now tinged with frustration, but Kennedy was quick to retort. "Let me tell you something, Professor," he said, leaning forward, his voice rising slightly. "You talk about oppression, but you don't understand what real hardship looks like. You've spent your career in an ivory tower, looking down at people like me, and people from communities across this country, as if we're somehow beneath you. Well, I'm here to tell you, Professor, we don't need lectures from folks who've never really had to fight for anything in their lives." The crowd erupted into a mixture of applause and murmurs, some cheering for Kennedy's bluntness, while others looked at Gray with a sense of discomfort, as if they were beginning to see his arguments in a new light. Gray, visibly rattled, tried to regain control of the conversation, but Kennedy's words had already struck a nerve. He attempted to defend his views by invoking the idea of systemic racism, but Kennedy was relentless. "Let me ask you this, Professor," he shot back. "If everything is so broken, if every system is so corrupt, why are people from all walks of life still coming to America? Why are people risking their lives to get here, if this is such an awful place? If the system is so racist and oppressive, why do people of all races, all backgrounds, keep working their butts off to be part of this country?" The question hung in the air, and for the first time that night, Gray seemed genuinely speechless. His mind scrambled for an answer, but none came because Kennedy had touched on the core of the issue that Gray and so many others like him had failed to acknowledge, that despite the flaws of the system, America, for all its imperfections, remained a beacon of opportunity for millions around the world. Gray's expression shifted from indignation to one of subtle resignation, realizing that his intellectual arguments had been exposed for what they were: high-minded theories that didn't account for the lived experiences of many Americans, particularly those who had fought tooth and nail to build something for themselves in a country that offered both challenges and rewards. Kennedy had won the crowd, and with it, the debate. The professor, visibly deflated, tried to salvage his dignity with a final attempt to reframe the conversation, but it was too late. The audience had already shifted their allegiance. The senator's grounded, practical view of America had not only outshone Gray's academic posturing, but it had also revealed the limits of the progressive professor's worldview that in its pursuit of social justice had overlooked the very real experiences of millions of hard-working Americans. As the debate drew to a close, the professor, having been utterly destroyed by Kennedy's direct and powerful rhetoric, sat silently, staring at the ground, regret creeping across his face. He knew that he had been outmatched, not just intellectually, but emotionally. In that moment, Gray realized that the real world did not operate within the confines of his theories. It was a place where hard work, resilience, and personal responsibility were the true markers of success. Kennedy, on the other hand, stood victorious, his words a reminder that in the battle for the soul of the nation, it was the common sense of everyday Americans that would always prevail over the lofty, disconnected theories of academia. And though Gray would later try to spin the encounter as a mere difference of opinion, deep down, he knew that on that stage, Kennedy had won. The senator's practical, down-to-earth approach had shattered the professor's idealistic framework, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. Then the realization that in the real world, words alone weren't enough.